Cece Pan, Monarch Magazine resident master chef, and your host for Culinary and Conversation, a live cooking experience where we create nutritious meals for your body and explore topics that nurture your mind. Conversations with some of today's top influencers, ranging from the world of politics, arts, film, music, and more. Now, I know you all are going to think that I'm just being dramatic because it probably seems like every time I do this, I'm super excited to talk to this person. But truly, this is one of my oldest friends, which is ridiculous because we're both 25. But anyway, I have known Diane since, oh my goodness, my freshman year, I think, and her sophomore year in high school. We went to boarding school together. And she has gone on this amazing journey, and we have remained friends for now, wow, 30 something years.
Oh, wow.
And she is an incredible woman. She was the founding executive director. She is currently the chief strategy officer and executive vice president for the US Dream Academy. Anybody who knows anything about the mentoring field and advocacy as it relates to prison reform and things like that, they know US Dream Academy. The other name that's very well known in this organization is Pastor Wintley Phipps, but we're focusing on Diane Wallace today. She is an incredible, incredible person. Diane is the kind of friend that we don't talk often, but when we talk, we talk. She is one of these warm, genuine, salt of the earth people. And I'm so happy to do this with her today. Welcome, Diane, to Culinary and Conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for that incredible introduction. And of course, you know, I feel the same way about you. Always love when we get a chance to connect and talk about everything. So it's great to be here with you.
Great. The love is mutual. So let me just let our watchers know, the people that are tuned in, we have both already started part of the meal. We are making mashed sweet potatoes today, and our twist on it, we are using Ras El Hanout, which is a northern Moroccan fragrance seasoning. It has a really unique fragrance to it and a really unique taste to it. And we wanted to do something that's kind of in keeping with the holiday season, but we wanted to put an ethnic, international diaspora type of twist to it. So that's why we're using Ras El Hanout. So what we have already done is we have washed, peeled, and cut into cubes sweet potatoes. We put them in cold water on the stove, and we're bringing it to a boil. So one of the things you do whenever you're making something that's like a root vegetable, you always start it in cold water, just to note. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, we are going to talk to Diane and find out everything about her, whatever she wants to share personally and professionally. So tell us, what is, for those who may not know, what is the mission of US Dream Academy? What is the organization all about?
So we are really about intervening in the lives of children who have had parents incarcerated and children who are living in high-risk communities. And so we have gone across this country and identified really what we call high-risk communities. So that's high crime, as marked by, we were looking at particularly arrest rates, but there's high rates of poverty and a failing Title I school. You know, in this country, we either got to have a strong family support and base, and so to be born into maybe some wealth or some money, a good education, right? Or you've got to be born into just have some money. Without one of these three, you have a really hard time making it. If you can't get access to good education, if you don't have a family support system that kind of helps and push you along the way, it's really challenging in this country, and particularly for African-American kids and kids of color. We know that there are a number of barriers to our success as a result of many, many years of racially unjust laws. We know that poverty, generational poverty is a very tough cycle to break from, particularly when the supports, your city, your elected officials in your own city are not putting in the right kinds of support to help people move and move out of poverty into an economic mobility. And so our goal is to really intervene, particularly for kids who were experiencing parental incarceration, to ensure that this cycle didn't continue, to ensure that we could create new pathways, new opportunities for them to really look at life with new options for their future. And we do that through mentoring, through tutoring, through lots of incredible people who expand opportunities for young people, right? Because access and equity at the end of the day, when you boil it all down, we have a lot of fancy words for racial injustice and equity. It's really about access, and it is about opportunity. It's about fair opportunity being given to our young people and to others. And so we wanted to intervene and create new access points to opportunities for their future. And we've been doing that for the past 21 years.
That's awesome. That is awesome. It is something that is so needed. That sounds, needed is not an adequate enough word for it. It is vital. If there's going to be any change in communities of color, in disenfranchised communities, the education is key. Being able to look to someone who not only inspires you, but then takes the time out to take you under their wing and guide you is so important. Because if the parent isn't there, if the parent is incarcerated, and so there's just one parent in the home, and that parent is struggling to make ends meet, oftentimes with the best intentions, things will still fall through the gaps. So that's where you all come in and play this vital role. So tell me, what age group, what ages are you working with?
So we go, for most of our existence, we did 3rd through 8th grade. And about 7 years ago, one of our staff in Orlando was saying, it's time for us to take this vision to the next level. We had always wanted to go K through 12, but there's resource restraints. And so he said, let me show us a model of how we can really track our students and stay connected in high school, because our goal was always to ensure that they graduated from high school. Mm-hmm. And we did a pilot. We said, okay, let's do this, because what was happening anyway, all across the country at our centers, kids kept coming back to us in high school. We had developed such meaningful relationships with young people that when they got stuck, when they needed help, when they needed encouragement, they would come back to us. They became volunteers with us. So we already had all these really natural ways of staying connected. And about 7 years ago, we built out more of an infrastructure to ensure that this wasn't just going to be happenstance, that we would follow them through high school. So in Orlando, we did that. We did a pilot for about 3 years, and we started to see a 92% on-time high school graduation for our young people, which statistically people would say kids in poverty have around a 60, 65, 68% graduation rate.
Increase.
So yeah, so 92. So when we saw that, we're like, we got to expand this across. So now we go 3rd through high school. We're still really working on building out the full infrastructure for ensuring that we can track all our and mentor, particularly all our kids in through high school. But what we've seen year over year is that it really is about relationships. Our model is focused on how we develop, we call developmental relationships, and it has 5 elements to it. To express care, provide support, challenge growth, share power, and expand opportunities. So everything we do, every session, every adult we bring into their lives is done within this framework of how you develop these relationships that drive achievement, that heal, they're healing, they are restorative, they help build perseverance and resilience among young people. And we've seen that work with our mentors and mentees, with our staff and our kids, with other people that we bring into this village who just really are trying to expand that village for them.
So you mentioned Orlando. I know you need to turn it down a little bit? Is it?
Should I turn it down? It's boiling. It's boiling.
We'll just take it down just a little bit, so it's kind of a full simmer.
Full simmer. Okay. I think I'm going to a full simmer. I got it. I think I got it.
So you mentioned Orlando as one of your sites, but I know you have sites all over. So tell us about where your sites are. How many do you have all together?
We have, where are we now? We're in 7 cities. So we're in DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Orlando, Houston, Salt Lake City, in San Bernardino, California, which is very near to my hometown of Loma Linda and Redlands area. And so that's where we are in person. COVID has changed, of course, everybody's world. And so we are really working on building out what we're calling our virtual village. And in a lot of ways, while we're doing this out of this urgent need, it also is going to allow us to really reach kids everywhere, all over the country. And to create the virtual village.
What happened with COVID is it has actually forced people to think and work in different ways, but it's also opened up so much room for impact in places that you never would have reached. Now, of course, there's always the digital divide, but you're addressing that.
We're trying. It's a divide. When they talk about a divide, the gap is wide. We have had companies, Amway, for example, has donated some of the technology. So it's not only the actual technology, but it's also the Wi-Fi access. It's, and especially right now with COVID, everybody's home. So like even in my house, right? My kid's home from college, my daughter's working here, I'm working, my husband's here. So there's 5 or 6 of us. My mom's moved in with us for a little bit. We're all on the Wi-Fi. We had to, call and up it and pay extra money. A lot of families can't do that. And that Wi-Fi connection is absolutely critical to kids accessing the world. And so even as we've been trying to do the virtual stuff over the last few months, we've got, kids trying to share a cell phone with their sister or brother who also need it to attend a class. You've got this spotty Wi-Fi connections that are on and they're off all throughout the session. It's coming and going. And so those types of experiences also really challenge kids in learning. And so while some kids have cell phones, and kids, because people are like, oh, these kids always have cell phones. Yeah, they do, but learning on a cell phone all day long is not that engaging. You need the computer screens, you need some good speakers, you need to be able to hear the same kinds of things we think about in a classroom. If the kid can't see very well, we want to make sure they're sitting up front. Do they have glasses? Do they have any hearing problems? And we diagnose those things in class. Teachers see it, counselors help.
Right.
But at home, kids are just kind of like, okay, just get on this little tiny cell phone and do 8 hours of class. So it's a challenge, and we're trying to help be creative to think through ways that the kids are going to not fall further behind.
So we're talking about the digital divide, and we're talking about how you're addressing that. I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about the effects, what you see in children of parents that are incarcerated. What is the type of trauma? What are the type of issues that you see with your young people?
That's a great question, because it does range, and it ranges based on the age, when their parent was incarcerated, the age of the child when the parent went away, whether the student, well, the child, we call them students, whether the kid witnessed the arrest or not, which creates a whole other set of trauma, whether the crime was against the child. And so there's a real range of experiences. And so I'm always really wary of like this danger of like a single story being able to capture a multitude of, a range of people's lives and experiences. But what we do know and what we have seen is that kids oftentimes experience depression. They're withdrawn, depending on their age. If they're 4 and 5 and they go through this, you really see developmental tasks really start to slow down. So if they were learning to read, if they were really beginning to increase their vocabulary, if they're learning the social cues, a lot of that stuff starts to get really pushed down, and survival mode begins to take place. And kids are experiencing trauma. And it is a traumatic event. Separation from a parent at any age. I mean, come on and think about our friends who we know who have lost parents. At any age, it is traumatic. And when you're young and when you don't know what's happening and it happens suddenly, no warning, no discussion, you have abandonment issues. Kids often feel like it's their own fault, even though they may have had nothing to do with it. We see kids acting out in class. Sometimes they're fighting because they've just got all this anger and pain inside. Other times they're really withdrawn. You definitely see a decrease in their academic performance, in their level of engagement in class. Sometimes they start to kind of get involved with, group of kids that may not be on the right path. But there are a number of developmental things that are happening in their brain. Trauma creates this inability, right, for us to, it floods our brain with adrenaline. And when we're in that fight or flight mode, we're not thinking about memory and retention. We're not thinking about our multiplication tables. We're not thinking about how I develop a positive relationship. We're thinking about how we survive. And unfortunately, kids who have to grow up in communities that are experiencing multiple risks, like high crime, like a lot of poverty, and cities or communities where the city hasn't really, neighborhoods, should I say, because this is usually neighborhoods within bigger cities that are thriving. So we're in Baltimore, in DC. There are thriving parts of DC, lots of thriving parts, in fact. But then there are these pockets of community where you have generations of families in poverty and kids who are in those communities in trauma, one after the other. So they're not even having healing and time in between. They're not accessing counselors and therapists, which you would do when you experience the trauma. And yet, 5-10 minutes away, you've got some of the best universities in the country. In DC, where we are in Southeast, 10-15 minutes away, we've got GW University, we have Howard University, we've got all these Capitol Hill, and people are thriving. And in the shadows of that, we have kids who are suffering. And that's happening all over our country, and it doesn't have to be that way. It just doesn't. Kids are being robbed of their childhoods, and you only get one childhood, right? And these kids, many of them, have to spend that childhood really suffering, really scared, really uncertain, really challenged. It builds up a resilience and a perseverance like I've never seen. I mean, I'm so in awe of how our young people show up every day in spite of what's going on, and they really want to fight for their dreams. But many of them, as any of us, would break under the weight of that at some point. And that's why we need mentoring. That's why we have to have more awareness about what's going on in our schools, why we have to bring in more supports, why we have to hold our elected officials more accountable for how we ensure that all of our communities have the kind of resources and jobs and transportation and safety that kids deserve to have, right? We should have cities that are absolutely thriving around us, and then these big pockets of crime and death and violence. It doesn't have to be that way, and we got to change that.
It is when you're speaking, what I'm hearing is systemic inequality.
Yes, and it's an inheritance of disadvantage.
Yes,
right. These are not kids who are just prone to crime. These are kids whose environment and the continued disadvantage that gets passed on when we don't think critically as a country about what racial injustice is done, about how the criminal justice system and mass incarceration over 30 years. And I mean, we incarcerate more people on planet Earth than any other country in the world. And our rates flew high, 500% growth. And that has an impact in communities. And it didn't necessarily make us a safer country, right? We're not thinking, I think, my opinion about this is that we use incarceration to deal with issues we don't want to really deal with. We don't really think critically about how to deal with people who have mental illness. We don't really want to think about how we deconstruct poverty and ensure that all people have opportunities for economic mobility. We're not really thinking about how our schools are failing our kids. We know what it takes to create thriving communities because we see them all over. We just don't see them enough in communities of color. And we have not taken the time, I think, as a country to think more critically about how we ensure that what we know works is working for all kids in all communities across this country. And it can happen, but it takes a different mindset. We have to move out of this mindset of scarcity. We have to move out of this mindset that there's not enough to go around. Because there is. And there is because a lot of it is about relationships and access.
You said something, was it an inheritance of inequity or an
inheritance of disadvantage?
Ooh, that's heavy.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna take a break and we're gonna drain our potatoes.
Okay, you want to drain them?
And so I'm just gonna use a colander and just pour that off. And you can either put it right back in the pot if you want to, or you can put it in a bowl.
Okay.
I'm gonna put it in a bowl.
Should I put mine in a bowl?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on, I'm still draining.
This conversation is so great. I forgot about the sweet potatoes.
I know, it's like, I forgot we are cooking.
Great.
So I should put them in a bowl when it's draining. Do I rinse them or anything, or just drain them?
Put it right in the bowl, and then we're going to take that baking powder and just sprinkle that across the top of it.
Why am I putting baking powder in here, by the way?
It helps it to break down, and it makes it smoother. You're going to have a smoother mash.
Ah, okay. Can you tell me? I don't know that. How much was it?
I would say like a solid teaspoon.
A teaspoon, okay. You already know my eyes are going. I'm trying to figure out what's a teaspoon on here. Hold on. Okay, a teaspoon?
Teaspoon and just sprinkle it across the top.
This looks big.
Not a tablespoon, a teaspoon. There you
go.
Right?
Okay, I did it. Okay.
Take the masher and just press down.
Just press down.
Yep.
It's sizzling.
Yay.
Is it yours sizzling?
No, I don't know what kind of baking powder you're using.
Girl, I'm telling you, it's literally sizzling. Is it? I'm worried.
No. You're good. Okay, so after you've mashed it a little bit,
yep.
You want to add in, we're going to do a pinch of salt.
Pinch of salt.
Pinch? Of salt. It says a teaspoon.
Oh, I'll put a teaspoon.
We're going to use our Ras El Hanout.
Is that the 5 spice?
Yeah. We're going to use
the 5 spice.
I love this. It's so great.
It smells wonderful.
Ras El Hanout is coriander, turmeric, cardamom, black pepper, cloves, cinnamon, and nutmeg.
Ah.
Very much has a holiday kind of, quality to it and flavors in it. So we're going to mix that in. The next thing we're going to do.
A teaspoon?
Just sprinkle it over the top. Yeah, a teaspoon.
Teaspoon, okay. It smells so good, I want to put more in. No?
You can always use more if you want.
Okay.
I just put some of our plant butter in here.
Okay, I know.
Earth Island for Miyoko's Creamery. I'm actually using this product that I found the other day at Sprouts, and I really like it. It's by Forager. It's an organic dairy-free butter, and it's delicious. Really creamy and delicious.
Ah, I have to try that. How much am I putting in here?
2 tablespoons.
Oh, 2 tablespoons. Very good. Okay.
every time you put something in, just go back and mash it to kind of incorporate it and mix it all the way through.
All right. I have to try that butter.
Sweetener, so you can either use maple syrup, which is one of my favorites, or honey or agave. I'm actually going to use honey because I think honey goes really well with this kind of old country Ras Al Hanout. You know, it's kind of like the original sweetener, you know?
Ah, so I have maple syrup. I think I have honey too, though. Let me see.
You can use maple. You know, maple has a little different flavor to it. It's
yeah,
fun.
I like maple. Let me try. How much?
How much are you putting in there? I use probably about 2 tablespoons. You can use more if you want it sweeter. I used about 2 tablespoons. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to use some of our plant milk. And I'm going to use about 2 tablespoons of that. Again, it depends on how, you know, if you like yours more like firm, you probably use a little less. If you want it a little more, I don't want to say soupy, but you know, if you want it to have a little more, be a little more loose, you would add more.
Add more? What's the thing called for the plant milk? What's the measurement?
Use about 2 tablespoons.
Oh, everything's about 2 tablespoons. Okay.
Yeah, every about 2 tablespoons. You can use a little more depending on how you want it. But
girl, you made this recipe up?
Yeah, I did, and I've made it several times.
I love it. You're so creative.
For those of you who want a really great half and half, I'm using Silk dairy-free half and half. This is so rich and luscious and delicious. You honestly, you know, there are times when I tell people if you're trying a vegan version, don't expect it to taste like the real thing because it won't. This tastes like the real thing. This is really, really good.
So that's Silk dairy half and half.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try that.
And so be done. So now all you have to do is test it, see if it has the sweetness, saltiness, spiciness, smoothness that you want. And if not, you just add a little more to where you want it to be.
Oh my goodness.
Is that good, Di?
I like it. I love it. I love that little 5 spice thing. What you call it?
Ras El Hanout. Ras El Hanout.
Ras El Hanout. I love it. I love it. It's delicious. We're gonna make this with some vegan meatloaf and some broccoli.
Because you have your little salty meatloaf and you've got your spicy sweet mashed potatoes, mashed sweet potatoes, and you've got your green beans. So we're not finished talking. I'm not letting you go yet. I have a talk about you personally. You've been doing this job for 21 years. And you know, just in the few moments I've been speaking to you, I have a heaviness with knowing what's going on. How do you stay centered in all of this? What do you do to kind of like keep it all together and not become overwhelmed with the challenge that you've been kicking butt? I mean, you've been handling this challenge, but you know, there's always another child. There's always another story. How do you stay centered? How do you regenerate?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because for a long time, I didn't do it well. And I think I let sort of anxiety and depression kind of get the best of me. And I had to really, you know, work back from that. But what really, and I had to really do, you know, of course, my faith centers me and allows me to see a world that can be very broken and challenging, but also a world that has a lot of good and an understanding that for me that this, you know, my faith that this world has already been conquered and that what we're here to learn, how we're here to learn and help others. And so I have to remember that, you know, at the end of this, there is victory, even if I don't necessarily see it in my lifetime, but my faith, my family, you know, I have 2 kids, you know, my kids, Robbie and Alexis, they're 19 and 23 now. And my husband, we've been married for 28 years. And I, oh, you sure were. Yes, you were, girl. You know, just having that family unit, I'm blessed to have both of my parents and my in-laws. Both of my in-laws are all well, alive and well. And there's just a strong community that continues to support us. So when you feel down and discouraged, there's always someone there that you can call and talk with or laugh with or share. And that's really important. For me, I also had to really make sure I was doing some exercise. And for me, it's been like walking. I'm not like this go to the gym, you know, person, but walking is really, really important for my health. And then trying to have a better diet. So, you know, I always love calling you and getting ideas about different recipes. My family and I have tried to get rid of things like high fructose corn syrup. And right now my daughter's not doing gluten. And so we're all kind of thinking about different ways to incorporate more healthy foods into our life, because I really believe that food is so directly connected to your mental health. And the, in addition to the food and exercise, the sleep. Sleep is where I'm still really challenged. I don't get enough sleep. I don't sleep well. But when I do, I feel a total difference. So I'm trying to kind of incorporate a better sleep pattern and be more disciplined there. But, you know, seeing these kids survive what they've survived and triumph, watching our young people who've become the first in their family to graduate from high school to go into college. Some of the kids I still mentor, they're now like 25, 26, 28. They're mentoring me on stuff, you know, and seeing that growth and knowing that change happens when we come together as a community, that gives me hope. It gives me a lot of hope, you know, about the future. And I mean, I gotta mention, you know, the work we've done with Monarch magazine. Will is you know, an incredible individual. I mean, his work with the magazine is beautiful and inspiring. But we've done a couple projects together with our Dream Kids. He hosted an opening of Black Panther. So when it first came out, you remember all the hype around that movie, and it was such an incredible movie. And so you rented out a movie theater. We brought our Dream Kids from DC and Baltimore and our mentors and parents, and had a great Q&A afterwards. And then we've done a few other things together. So those kind of partnerships that people just out of the goodness of their heart and because they want to make a difference, come together and create moments for our kids. It's special. It's special. So Monarch magazine and Will, you know, a special place in our hearts at Dream Academy.
He definitely is a unique individual, and he is using his platform to make a difference. And that's wonderful, because he's not focused on one particular demographic. He's doing well while doing good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that. I love it when people really, you know, it both on their rise and when they get to the top, when they really think about how do I use my platform to ensure that others can achieve. And that to me is real success. You know?
Because while some may challenge this way of thinking, no man is an island, and we are all interconnected. And I've said things like, you may not worry about that child who is in Southeast DC because you think that him not getting an education doesn't affect you. His parents, his father or his mother being incarcerated doesn't affect you. Drugs being sold in his neighborhood don't affect you. But when that child does not have an opportunity to get educated, and the only way he feels he can feed his children is by robbing you or creating or doing something, because I don't want to stereotype, but I'm just giving an example. Mm-hmm. People don't understand that crime oftentimes is a symptom of something else that's going on. You know, there are some people that go into a life of crime or get into nefarious things because they feel like they have no other options. It's easy for us to stand out here and say, you didn't have to do that. Mm-hmm. You know? But when somebody really feels like you're not listening to me, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. And they see somebody with bread, guess what? Now it's at your front door. So we're all interconnected. And, it's unfortunate that we are living in a society where that has been lost, but organizations like US Dream Academy highlight the difference that can be made when we recognize that we're interconnected, and it just takes one person.
Yeah, sometimes it really literally can be one person. We want it to be more than one person. We need it to be, when we talk about systemic change, it has to be all of us coming together, but it can take one person to change the trajectory of a child.
Something you were saying that struck me, because a lot of our conversations and the culinary conversations have been about COVID and how COVID has affected the community. And we talk about how it's affected the community because of health disparities, because of, a lot of what's killing us in community of colors are things that are tied to diet. But we're looking at the physical, we're not looking at the mental. And it's sad, because that is just as big of an issue, mental health. And the children that you are working with, as you said, that trauma oftentimes results in mental health issues, coping issues, inability to deal with this, inability to deal with that. So that's something that should be in our minds as well. And again, what you're doing is addressing that thing that people kind of want to, push under the rug.
Yeah, because we even as a society, particularly in America, we don't really have thoughtful conversations too about mental health. And I think that it's still a lot of shame and stigma around it, even if we're talking about something like depression, which so many people deal with. We don't really have healthy conversations from a young age with young people around these changes, depression, anxiety. There are obviously a range of things that around mental health, but we need to be thinking more holistically around particularly as we are talking in our country about how we remove systemic barriers. One of those barriers is access to healthcare. And I'm not just talking about diabetes and heart, which are all critically important in our physical health, but how we also think about and approach our mental health. They're calling it brain health now, right? Because they're trying to give it a new term, but our brain, the health of our brain, right? How are our hormones and how things like trauma have impacted the way our brains develop? We have a lot more research in the last 50 years in understanding that. So we really know much more clearly what's happening for young people and older people as they experience violence. And not just once or twice in their life. We've known young kids who have had 4 and 5 and 6 people by the time they were 12 and 13 who were violently killed, right? And then have a parent incarcerated. And so we don't, I think, give enough credit to these young people who do show up day after day to school, who are achieving, who are still keeping up their grades in the midst of all of this. And we just want to focus in on those who are creating all the havoc, right? But there's a whole other group of kids who are growing up in really difficult circumstances who are holding it down for their community. And I think we got to celebrate them too, which is what we try to do at our galas. We're really trying to highlight. I want to send you guys this link because I want you and Will to see the event, and maybe there's some stuff you guys can share with your Monarch community around the celebrations of young people, because I'm a little frustrated with the media and how we focus a lot on all the negative, but there's so many wonderful things that young people are doing that we can and should be talking about more.
Powerful. I mean, this has been such a great conversation, enlightening. I've known you for all these years, and I learned so much more about US Dream Academy than I knew. And it's really encouraged me to make a difference too, because, you know, sometimes those things are out of sight, out of mind. When, you know, the African-American communities of colors are not a monolith. So we live differently, and so you can be apart away from it. And it's kind of convenient because you don't have to deal with it. But again,
yeah.
It's an island, and it's when you are blessed and fortunate, you need to give back because you're giving back to the future of your community.
Exactly. You are giving back to the future of your community. Absolutely. Well said. And I think that,
so here's my final question for you.
Yeah.
If you could have chosen a mentor, I'm sure you have mentors because we've talked about Susan,
yeah.
that was since it's now the National Mentoring. What is it called? The National Mentoring?
The National Cares Mentoring Movement. Yeah, led by Susan L. Taylor of Essex Magazine.
If you could, apart from Susan, anybody in history that you would have liked to have had as a mentor, who would that be?
Wow. That's a tough one because there's so many incredible people. But I'll tell you, you know, I have always really thought about Harriet Tubman in times for me, when I'm feeling not so strong or when I'm feeling not so courageous. I think about what she did, you know, to keep coming back down into the South to free other slaves, to free herself, right? To even think about the option that I could be free at a time when everyone around her was enslaved. That takes a certain mindset. And then to do it takes another mindset. And then to do it over and over again and to risk your own life. And so, yeah, there are days where I just kind of want to be like, you know, what gave you that courage? And what went through your mind all those times that you would go back into the South to try to free others, knowing that you could be, knowing that if she got caught, she wasn't going to be enslaved again. She was going to be killed, and probably in a very violent, horrible way.
But you know, to her calling and your calling, Diane, because there are people that look at what you do and say, I could not deal. I will say that. I think you're like balled up in a corner somewhere. There are people that you were called for such a time as this. You have been equipped with what you needed to do with why you were created. This is your purpose. And you've done it. You know, and she did it. And while hers may seem like, there's somebody who's looking at you saying, wow, that's deep.
You know, and when you're in the midst of it, you don't always feel like you're doing it. You know, when you're in the midst of it, you feel like there's so much more to do. There's so much more, many more things to accomplish. There's so many more things we want to change about community. So thank you for saying that, because you do need that encouragement along the way to know that we're impacting kids and families, and really it's our work for the next whoever knows how long. Like you said, however long you're called to. We have different seasons in our lives, and as I get older, I also think about, you know, other areas and other things should I be exploring. And so I think this, you know, coming into our 50s is a whole new part of life that I'm also trying to navigate. Huh?
Who's coming into their 50s?
Well, oh, that's right. Not us. I mean, you know, when you're 10 years or 20 years away from 50, you start thinking about it. It's a whole other world out here, honey. Mercy.
Yeah.
But God is good, you know, and I feel grateful, especially 2020. My goodness. A lot of people didn't make it to this point. And so you got to be grateful every day.
This is true. So if someone wants to find out more about US Dream Academy, how do they do that?
Yes, so go to usdreamacademy.org. You can go there to our website. You can check us out on Facebook or on Twitter, US Dream Academy. If you want to be a mentor, mentors.usdreamacademy.org. But if you forget that, just go to our website, usdreamacademy.org. Our phone number is there and everything.
Yeah, we'll make sure. Okay.
That would be great. This has been fun. I'm excited about maybe I gotta make this on Thanksgiving, big old pot of it. Do you ever kind of turn it into a souffle or anything?
Do that the way I did it. I know you can't see me, but I took some crystallized ginger and I diced it up really small and I put it right on top. So viewers who are seeing me will see it. And you can even do, after you do that, you can just do another drizzle of honey or something on top. But this is so good. This is just good by itself. I love this stuff. I just take a spoon and just
I do too. Thank you for showing me another recipe. Keep sending them. I'm looking forward to your this new, well, not so new anymore, right? But this what you're doing with Will and Monarch, and I want to love to share it and get it out. You're incredible. Your health focus and how you're helping people to think about their health in different ways is inspiring.
Thank you. And this is something that I need to say about Miss Diane Wallace Booker before we sign off. Diane is a mentor. She is a connector. She is selfless with her connections. Her being the chief strategy officer is so fitting because she is very thoughtful and strategic with how she connects her people. We've known each other for years. Diane is always somebody who has encouraged my interests, my career, my passions, whatever I'm doing. And she constantly is looking for opportunities and pushing things my way. And I want to thank you because it is truly because of you that I am doing this. And I love this. This has been my dream for so many years. And you connected me with Will a few years ago. And this idea came together and I'm thankful. So this has to do with you have been called to something and you are diligent and responsible with your calling. And you being responsible with your calling has blessed my life. It's so important to do what you have been given to do because there are people that are waiting for you to be responsible. If you're not responsible with your gifts, there are people that will never get theirs. So thank you, Diane. I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad that you are doing this because you just light up when you're in your passion and your space. And I'm glad to have any little part in helping to make that happen. Thank you.
Well, everyone, thank you for joining. I'm about to start crying, so I need to jump off this Zoom.
This has been fun. Thank you. And thank you, Will and Monarch Magazine. You guys are great partners to us. Look forward to finding new ways to help create the futures for our kids.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.